All right, everyone. Welcome once again to the Faces of Business. I am your host, Damon Pistolka, and I am very excited for our show today because I've got Dan Aldridge from Merino Consulting Services, and we're going to be talking about lessons learned to build your second business better. And Dan, welcome.
Hello, everybody. Thank you.
Well, it is going to be awesome. We got going here before the show started, and man, I tell you what, Dan, we got a lot to talk about. That's for sure, because there's some fun stuff. And so, the way we like to start out usually is we like to hear, how did Dan get going? What's in your background? How you really got into being what does it say? Okay, sorry, we're gonna slow down here a minute. I gotta go back to this because you are the ERP doctor. I've never heard that before. I thought that was great. And because let's see what led up to being Dan becoming the ERP doctor, forming your company Performa Apps to help people. Want to hear about that. And then eventually you sold your company to help another company come into the United States. And ultimately we'll get to our topic about building your second business better, because with Merino, you're helping them come into the United States.
Yeah.
And this is your second time around. So let's get started, Dan. That was long-winded, but I had to find the ERP doctor because I saw that's cool. So let's get going.
How I got into ERP software. ERP stands for Enterprise Resource Planning, by the way, for anybody who doesn't know that. And it's a type of software used in manufacturing companies and, well, actually lots of different types of companies to run their entire business. But it got its start in manufacturing companies. So there was originally something called material requirements planning, which was production planning for software that started in the 80s, essentially. So there was a little company called SAP, which started in the 80s, building this software. And I actually got into ERP software. I came out of government contracting, thank God. I live in the DC area. And I interviewed with a Dutch company called Baan, B-A-A-N. It was named for the founder, Jan Baan, who was a pioneer in this industry in ERP. And at the time, they were the second biggest ERP software company in the world. And I interviewed in 96 and got the job and started right out into manufacturing companies. So I was at Carrier and Grove Cranes and all kinds of different manufacturers, Mercedes-Benz when they were building their M-Class, Siemens, lots of different kinds of companies. And I just basically fell in love with manufacturing and ERP, and I've been doing it ever since.
So what really hooked you on ERP software, helping people implement it better? What really hooked you?
I have so many stories, but I'll tell you one in particular that kind of gives you an example of the hook that got into me at being in manufacturing companies. I was at a company when I was at Baan called PV Electronics. PV is a company in the middle of Meridian, Mississippi, and second largest city in Mississippi at about 50,000 people, I think, but it's way out in the middle of nowhere. And they make, they're famous for amplifiers and speakers. So if you go to a rock concert, for instance, you'll see PV in that kind of writing, right? PV Electronics. And I got the pleasure of implementing Baan at PV, and I was their finance consultant. So I got to go there and see their operation, which included a shop floor. It's an immense shop floor that just goes for blocks and blocks. And they make all kinds of things. In addition to amplifiers and speakers, they make guitars, for example. I had no idea PV made guitars. And I went down on the shop floor and I met up with this guy who was the shop floor supervisor, and he looked like wavy gravy, right? He had the long hair, and he had like a ponytail, and he had a leather vest, and he was over there in the testing area. And I was like, "What are you testing?" And he goes, "I'm testing guitars." And he was just jamming out on his PV guitar. and you know, I was like, "Oh my God, this is the most amazing thing." And then, well, do you want to see the studio? And I said, "You got a studio?" And they said, "Yeah, it's a room over here in one of the other buildings." I went over there, and they had all these pictures of all the rock stars like Van Halen and all these guys, and they had a full studio where you could record, and they had guitars and drums and you know, had all the amps and everything, all PV equipment. And you basically, that's where the guys like Van Halen had been to jam.
Wow.
So that's the kind of thing that, you know, that really hooked me. Another one that hooked me was, and this was a little bit after I founded my consulting firm, but you know, Bluebird, right?
Yeah.
School buses.
Yep.
People know Bluebird. You know, and if you see in movies, if you see a school bus, it's a lot of times it's a Bluebird school bus. You know, I noticed these things because I put in their software for them.
Yeah.
So I got to see how they make the buses, you know, and I said, I'm a finance guy, right? So I went up to the ivory tower first, right? When I got there, I went to the ivory tower, and they said, "That's where all the finance guys are." I said, you know, I want to go where the action is. I want to go see the shop floor, right? So I went on the shop floor, and they're have these chassis, and the engines come, they have a conveyor belt, and the engines come and get laid in there. And then they flip the chassis over, and they put the cab on from underneath, which,
oh my goodness,
that one of the shop floor guys came up with this idea to flip it over, and then they flip it back and put on the cab, you know? And I was just like, God, this is fascinating. And they said, you want to see our inventory? And I said, yeah, sure. And they said, well, go out the back there by the dock, and there's our inventory. So I go out the back, and there's like, for miles and miles, there's buses as far as you can see. And that's their inventory.
Wow.
It was just the most fascinating thing. And I thought to myself, wow, I've really arrived at exactly what I want to do. And there's so many interesting companies that are doing this stuff. And even though it's like not the most fashionable thing right now, it's kind of the back office kind of, people think it's like the grunt stuff and all of that. To me, it's still fascinating. And I see the innovations that they're doing in it, and they're adding AI, they're adding all these other things into it now, to make it better. And they're hooking it up with the machines. And, you know, I saw your big commerce thing. So that's the e-commerce, the front end for the ERP. So the ERP is kind of boring, and it does the work of the production planning and things like that. But it's still very important. And obviously it's the core of what a manufacturing company and actually many other types of companies, distribution companies and all, they run on ERP as well. Yeah.
Well, it really, I mean, in a lot of companies, it's without it, you just don't have a financial gauge of anything, because it ties the real world to the numbers. And that's a critical step that was missing when you talked about MRP or any of the predecessors to the ERPs, right? It just didn't have the connection to the dollars. And
you're pretty up on this stuff.
And it was hard. Well, I lived it, dude. I lived it, dude. I
know with your manufacturing.
In my lifetime, and at smaller systems, obviously. I mean, we did do like an Epicor system at the end, but it's still, that was in a smaller manufacturing. But before that, you had just separate systems, right? You'd have your system that you keep your inventory on, which isn't connected to your finance system. And at the end of the month, they'd have to put the numbers in the others and all the other crazy stuff that they had to do. And that was quite a process. It was quite a process. It was quite a process when I can remember when the first systems came out, because when I was in college, I was working at a company. It was lucky, they were growing, and they're like, hey, you put this software in. We don't know how to do it. You put it in, and then it was actually the first stab at keeping inventory in an accounting package that they had bought. So I don't even remember what it was, but that was a big deal in those days. And now you look at what these ERP systems have evolved to, and how they're still that core center of these businesses to allow them to operate, like, just from ordering things to letting their customers order things to cranking the books out at the end of the month or whenever they need them, and all the other information needs. So it's been a heck of a change for you, I'm sure, as you've seen these systems go from, the old legacy things that were running on some specialized computer in the back to now. I'm sure a lot of these people are using cloud resources to run their systems.
Yeah. So a good example is, well, actually all of them: S4 HANA, ERP, like Oracle Fusion Cloud, Dynamics, Microsoft Dynamics, Finance and Operations. They're all running on the cloud now. Infor has one called the Cloud Suites, which runs on the cloud, of course. I've done some writing about that. It's great. I mean, you log in with the browser. Everything in the Infor's case is on AWS, so it's all housed there. All the integrations with things like e-commerce and everything would be also on the cloud. And it's got automation built in now, business process flows and things like that. And the connections, the APIs and things like that, or connections, is all built in, and it's all on the cloud, right? So, if you have an on-premise system, you're missing out on the newest things, right? And the newest functionality and the newest capabilities, right? Because they're not going to continue to develop so much the on-premise. I mean, they'll keep it around and they'll sunset it gradually, right? Because there's so many people on it. It's like SAP is on ECC. Almost everybody is on ECC or R3, maybe even there's some R3 still around, I think. But they want you to go to SAP S4 HANA Cloud, right? Which is quite a process. I mean, it's not a straightforward migration path for that.
It all sounds ugly. It all sounds ugly because the simplicity of having it browser based is undeniable. And if you can get the features out of it, that's used to be the holdup, right? You couldn't get the features from a browser based system like you could from a on-premise kind of thing.
Right.
And so that's cool that's happening. So let's go back just a little bit, because you touched on this. You said you're at PV, thought that was cool. You mentioned some other places though that are very interesting. So you were at the Mercedes-Benz or Carrier. What out of these places, what's the most interesting manufacturer when you walked in and went, wow, I had no idea that was made that way, or that's the coolest thing I've ever seen made?
Actually, it isn't any of those I mentioned.
Very cool.
It's another company called Progress Rail. Okay.
Progress Rail.
So Progress Rail was one of my customers I built just to fill in a little bit, I built Performa Apps, which was an Infor LN, which is what Baan came to be called when Infor took it over. Actually, they bought SSA, who had bought Baan, but it became Infor LN. Now it's the Infor LN based cloud suites. Okay. But along that way, when I was building Performa Apps, I went to one of their Inforums. So I was looking for a good sized client. And actually I had another little side story. I hired the project manager from PV to be my program manager over all my projects, because she was so incredible. And I remembered her, and years later, I hired her onto a project. So I was with her, meeting with the guys from Progress Rail. Now, Progress Rail is, I believe they're over 20 billion This is a massive company, and it's not even the high. It's a division of Caterpillar. So Caterpillar is, of course, over 100 billion.
Yeah.
So there's a couple divisions that were running Infor LN. But they're also running SAP. They run, all of these huge companies run multiple ERPs. You can't get away from it. But anyway, Progress Rail is the biggest company in the railway business. So they build railway cars. They build all kinds of crazy stuff like machines, these huge machines that go along tracks. They lift up the tracks. They repair the ties. They put down ballast.
Yep.
Exactly. Though Progress Rail makes those things. How cool is that? They make these things that are like big cranes, and they have a circular saw at the top of the crane. And what it does is, as it goes down, as you can imagine, all the trees overhang the tracks.
Oh, yeah.
So it cuts the tree limbs, and then it mulches the tree limbs. Or maybe a separate machine that does that.
Yeah.
But how cool is that? Like something you never think of. You're like, well, how do the limbs of the trees get trimmed? Well, it's this thing going along the track and cutting it off with a circular saw.
Wow.
It's just cool as hell. And they do everything related to, they do service too. They have a massive service organization. They're putting in the soft ERP in about 157 plants. So you can imagine the scale of something like this. This is a multi-year project. And, Caterpillar is running SAP at corporate. So there's integrations and replacements and, this and that, and MES systems that they have to hook it up to the machines. And you could just imagine the scale of something like that. But in terms of a product, and this is just a massive project. Of course, it was multiple millions for us. It was a huge project for us. It kind of made us in a way, right? Being a small consulting firm, to win that project was massive for us. But anyway, the product that they make is just so cool. And they would always have me down they have a golf tournament, Christmas for Kids.
Yeah.
And it's down at their headquarters is in Albertville, Alabama. So another place way out in the country. But you familiar with the Robert Trent Jones golf trail? It's called the Golf Trail, Robert Trent Jones. It goes through Alabama and, various other southern states. But it's just an absolutely gorgeous thing. And we all go off at once and, have our T-shirts, and they give, our golf shirts and everything. It's just a really nice event. Go out and drink beers, hang out with the bikers. Yeah. Just fantastic.
Yeah. Good stuff. So that the BNSF runs, one of the main rails runs very close to my house, and I see that kind of equipment. And that's amazing. Some of the track laying equipment, or even here, because it is a main line. I mean, the amount of work that it takes just lifting the track up and re-pushing the ballast under it, and then
put the ties. They replace the ties, slide them out, and slide them in.
Slide them out and slide them in.
Amazing.
And, most of it's concrete now on the ties, at least where we're at here. But then the amount of just keeping the rock that's supporting the rails firm and making sure the track is level like it's supposed to be, and it just sits there and does that, just keeps chunking, and you hear it's amazing that equipment. You see it running all the time, and I had no idea whether it's made, because there is so much specialty stuff around rail, like you said. I can remember seeing some of the big snow blowers that they have to make for the specialty snow blowers for when you get up in the northern routes, and that's amazing. It's amazing junk, amazing stuff. Yeah, so cool. So 100, that's a massive project. How many fingers are touching something like that? Oh God. So
it's a lot.
Yeah. So as you're looking at that, what are some of the stories that really stuck with you about these systems and how the ERP really changed the way that the companies operated, made them operate better, things like that?
Just something about how they got better or so.
Yeah,
There's
just what are
a
some
lot
of
of
the things
those
like
sorts of things.
someone stopped you and just said, listen, this thing has changed the way that we've been able to do business, or we
Yeah.
were never able to do this before and now it works, or some of those things. Like,
Yeah, I think it was a lot the production process and the planning process and the lead times, being able to really cut the lead times and increase the quality, and get some feedback from the machines and things like that when they integrated with
wow.
the MES
Yeah.
system. So that's been the uptime of the equipment and everything like that. Just more efficiency, and just improving the process and the quality. Lot
Yeah.
of anecdotal things like that, but there's also metrics, that they had KPIs, of course,
Yeah. Yeah.
and KPIs were a lot of more financial in nature,
Mm-hmm.
but improve profitability and things like that. But there's
Yeah.
a lot of metrics like that: on time delivery, things like that, supplier lead time,
Help to
and their
improve a lot of
ability
things.
to, yeah, there's ability to improve the vendor ratings and things like that. There's a lot of that sort of stuff that you don't think
Mm-hmm.
about that's
Yeah.
inside the software. But I
Okay.
think the major parts are the so they have multi-site planning also, which is a
Oh,
huge thing, right? Because you
yeah.
can coordinate between these sites. You have to get them all up on the system, running
Mm-hmm.
on the system before that works, right? But you can coordinate between them.
Yeah.
And they set up some EDI and some communications stuff like that with their suppliers as well, and with
Cool.
CAT. They had to coordinate with CAT too
Yeah.
for the parts and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So there was some coordination between the different divisions and with the headquarters, which
Yeah.
all can improve or did improve with the systems being put in.
Yeah. Very cool. So you've been working with being the ERP doctor, you've been working with ERP for a while.
That's my little hook. What do
I
you
love it.
think?
I love it. I'm going to
I
say
even
it a
have a
lot.
hashtag. I have a hashtag, the ERP doctor. You can follow it, and it's got all
All
my
right.
posts on it.
Okay. The hashtag, the ERP doctor. All right.
Yes.
Good stuff. Well, so let's talk, we're going to get into priority software, Merino, in just a moment, but let's talk a little more about ERP, because we're at kind of a interesting time here,
Yep.
because we have ERP systems in specific, and we have this massive groundswell, whatever you want to call it, of AI, that these
Yep.
large language models have come out. And, everybody thinks they're going to change the world, which I'm sure they're going to do a lot. They already have. But how do you see AI really coming into play in ERP?
So I wrote a post about this, Damon. How AI is transforming ERP.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it is going to be in terms of automation of
Okay.
processes. So you have, I'll give an example. And you might say this is machine learning versus AI. There's a thin line distinction between
Yeah.
the two. But example would be, so you have these optical character resolution recognition software that when you bring in an invoice, so they send you an invoice, you scan it with this software, and it picks out all the information like the invoice number, the PO number, and everything, and it reads it into the ERP. So it's kind of an automated way of reading the information in. Okay. Some of that information is by definition dirty. And there's a couple other processes that humans normally do, like matching to the receipt, like matching to the PO. AI can automate that process entirely.
Ooh.
So it can perform what's called the three-way match. You might have heard of the three-way match, right? That's an accounts payable, match to receipt, number 2, match to PO, number 3. Okay, there's the three-way match. So AI can automate that, and it can also figure out ways to clean up the data too. So it can then identify patterns from suppliers, different suppliers, what they're doing differently, things like that. So it can sort of automate that whole process and start to learn about a supplier. Okay. Another example would be, and this is what I put in my article, which is a Terminator themed article, by the way. I put in another example of credit and collections, right? So you have a credit limit, a credit balance, invoices past due, 30, 60, 90, whatever the patterns may be. AI can interpret the patterns of a particular customer. They can say, well, they're constantly overdue and they have this huge balance over 90. This is not a good customer. This is a bad customer. This is a customer we should put on credit hold. This is a customer we should reevaluate with Dun & Bradstreet. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It can basically tell the accounts receivable manager or clerk, this is a good customer, this is a bad customer, and here's why. Okay, wow. That's another example. Of course, you've got Copilot, like Microsoft's version is called Copilot. Infor's version is called Coleman, and I'm just getting into it. It seems to be very interesting. So I'm digging into those different, different ERP vendors' AI capability. But the one that's most well known is Microsoft with Copilot. Okay, so Copilot is large language or generative AI, that's sitting right beside you, and you ask it questions, and it generates content for you, or it generates answers to your questions that you're having right here. So theoretically, it can be hooked up to Dynamics 365, which is their ERP. They have a couple different flavors of ERP, and you have Copilot there that's kind of alongside you with the Gen AI capability, helping you make decisions. So it's already here. That's already here. It's getting into more processes. They're rapidly working it into more processes, and all the ERP vendors are doing this.
Yeah. Well, it seems like it's going to, like a lot of automation does, help the people doing the processes be more effective.
Yes.
At this point.
Theoretically, yes. And not take their jobs.
Yeah. Well, I mean, honestly, if you look at manufacturers, they can't hire enough people to do what they want. I mean, we talk about physical automation with robotics and other things, and we talked for well over a decade, if not 20 years, about how robotics were going to displace all these people. And honestly, we have so many people retiring out of the workforce, and we can't attract people into manufacturing fast enough. The robotics just saved the industry, if anything, because we don't have the numbers of people that we really would. I forget, someone said there was like 4 million, or I forget, millions of jobs that are open in manufacturing that they can't fill right now.
Yeah, I mean, and so old guys like me are retiring, Frank.
Yeah, we're walking out the door. I mean, it's and it's like, but it's the interesting thing, I think, is that when you look at ERP, you look at some of the customer facing stuff and what AI can really do in conjunction with other systems, is really allow our people that are interfacing with customers be smarter. And because if you think the way that if your ERP system is holding, product data about what Damon's company ordered from you, and I'm someone that's calling about customer service, right? We've got a problem. We need to order some parts, maybe aftermarket kind of stuff, not aftermarket, but some OEM replacement parts. And I'm on the line trying to help get those parts ordered for them. It's my third day, or I'm even there. Right. I've been there a year. Right. And this is an older piece of equipment, or it's a piece of equipment that I'm not familiar with for some sort. That AI or that working together with the right system, like an ERP system, and the data and how it can go, it can help them out a lot to show them what did we order and get them to the right information to help them. get what they
Yeah,
need.
and that's, but I talk about this a little bit in my article as well. There's some dangers in that. So if you keep a firewall around internal data that an ERP system stores, and there's a lot of it,
Oh yeah.
competitive information,
Yep.
financial information, things like that. If you're not careful, or you don't put guardrails around the dark side, so to speak,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
there can be competitive information that a chat GPT can get a hold of,
Yeah.
or even something that's internal to an ERP system, because it's looking outside and it's looking inside.
Yeah.
And improperly used or turned on, in essence, it could, in all seriousness, and I have a Terminator theme to it, partly because it's fun, but partly because it's scary.
Yeah, it is.
It is scary. And competitive information and things like, another example is writing code, right? The coders are probably the smartest guys in the room, and the guys that created this thing. I hesitate to call it a monster. It's not a monster. It's a tool. They created this tool. Now they're busy watching as this tool learns how to program better than they do.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Which must be really frightening for people. And the interesting thing is, and you brought up robotics and things, that's a blue collar thing. This is a white collar thing.
Yeah, that's
right?
true. It's different.
The people that could potentially be displaced by this kind of technology are white collar people. Right? Like I'm just postulating here. I'm not manufacturing. Let's take a researcher in a law firm or a paralegal. What does a paralegal do that AI can't do? Much faster. I mean, to me, it's not a creative thing. I feel as though, since I'm writing, I like to think I'm a creative person, and I can make something that AI can't yet beat. Right? Yeah. It's something that comes from me, like my writing. But AI is going to get there. It probably can get there. I mean, it already can do images, it can do video, it can do all that stuff, and it's pretty darn creative if you look at it, right? Yeah. So for me, and that's why, like in Hollywood, they're all up at arms, and anybody who's in a creative type position should be, that this thing is what they fear for their jobs.
Yeah.
And there was a quote that I have in my thing. It's about James Cameron, who was the director. He said, when you call me and tell me that ChatGPT won an Oscar, then I'll believe it's arrived.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, that's a little bit pompous in a way, right? Because ChatGPT it could probably, who knows what it'll be. In 2 months, we don't know what it'll be. Yeah. I mean, I still think it's way behind in terms of creative writing, because I tried to use Gen AI and I tried to make a new blog for myself, and it was pretty bad. I have to say, it was pretty bad. I mean, maybe I'm just biased because I like my own writing, but you know what I mean? It's not quite there yet. But it's, and that brings me to something that I wanted to throw in here real quick. I'm part of this. There's a website called Solutions Review, solutionsreview.com, and they have an expert portal, what they call an expert portal, and I'm part of it. So I've been seeing, they just put up, and they're going to fully launch it in September, so it's not fully launched. But I've seen my little avatar, and I've seen some of my content there already, and it's going to be a members only thing. You pay $500 a year to have access to us experts. I still think that's funny that I'm an expert. But you'll have access to our content, also some webinars, podcasts, and messaging, and be able to book some time with us. So I think it's a great thing. And when I met with the guys, they said, we saw they said, we looked at some of your articles before, but we think this one, the AI and ERP one, was kind of special, and we thought we'd give you a call and invite you into the experts
Very
group
cool.
because thank you. Because it's a great topic, first of all, and it's a great add-on to my ERP that I already love, but what they said to me, which was really interesting, was they said, we want to create a safe haven for you as a creator. Safe from what? Safe from Chat GPT.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think that general thing is something that we need to be aware of. I mean, take any business, my business, your business, any business that's on the internet that has information that's out there, right? Could be, they could be affected by Chat GPT or any other Gen AI, or they're calling them golems now. They're calling them, I forget what that stands for, but it's large language model, golem. I just saw a thing about that, but anyway, it's going to be really interesting for any company. And also it's going to affect marketing and things like that, right? So content generation with AI, I mean, it already is. I mean, you make a video. The guy showed me a thing where you can make a video and it writes a blog post. It writes a LinkedIn post to announce the blog post. Mm-hmm. and you have the video as an asset.
Mm-hmm.
But ChatGPT or whatever engine that they have, Gen AI engine, is making content. And, a creator like me can't keep up with that.
Yeah.
It's just way too fast.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting how some of that goes. And as we, it's like anything. I think we're going to have some big stumbles and we're going to have some big jumps forward. So let's talk a little bit about, so you started Performa Apps, man. It was a little while ago.
It was a long time ago.
And then Priority Software approached you and they said, listen, we want to come to the United States. And you can you just generally explain why you were a strategic acquisition for them, and then a couple of things that you can learn, and then let's talk about getting into your second go around with this with Merino and how it differs. Some of the things that you're doing now that you weren't doing before. I think it's really interesting.
Yeah. So the first thing is that it was strategic for them to acquire my company because we had a really good reputation in the market. We were already a software partner of Infor. So we already had that experience. We had a consulting practice that frankly had some really good cash flow on it. So they wanted to get that revenue stream. They wanted to get somebody who I had a relatively good name in the ERP software market in general, right? Is known as somebody who knows something about ERP software. And then I had already built that business and won big contracts. So they looked at that too. They said, he's built that business, won big contracts, has a consulting cash flow, and knows the market. Most importantly, probably knows the US market versus SAP or anybody else who was in the market. So how to sell versus them. So that's how they came to be acquiring me, acquiring my company. And I was ready. I was tired of being an entrepreneur. You get your ups and your downs, and we were doing quite well when I sold, but I had some other investors, and I told them I wanted to develop a Microsoft Dynamics 365 practice in addition to the other one. And they said, no, we'll just kind of sit back and take your cash flow. We're pretty pleased with that. So I said, no, I want to be shopped now. I want to be acquired by another company because that's not the direction that I want to go in. So anyway, so that's how it came to be. So what happened, right? You want to know what happened?
Priority wanted to come to the US.
Yes.
And you already had the presence in the US, and explain, their strategic reason for buying you guys. if you can.
Well, yeah, that's basically just what I said. I mean, knowing the market,
Okay.
hoping, you know, that I could sell against other ERP vendors here.
Okay.
Had developed a company, had built a company before
Yeah.
that was quite successful, although small.
Yeah.
So those were really the main reasons. And I knew the market, and I had a good reputation on say LinkedIn and some other places. I was known in the market.
Yeah.
Relatively.
Let's fast forward now. So
Okay.
so you had built Performa, you got bought out with a strategic acquisition for them to come. They wanted to come to the US. So you're done with that. And you're past Priority. Yeah. Priority, because Performa is a company that you sold to Priority. Merino comes to you. They say, hey, we want to come to the US, and Dan, we want you to lead our North American operations or US operations. I'm not exactly for sure, but what was the first thought that went through your head?
Oh shit. Can I say shit on the air?
Yeah, that's good. That's awesome. No, it is, because it's like, to me, looking at it from the outside, you're like, I just got out of this.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to come back again, because you had been in Performa. You know, you started that 20 years ago almost.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, there's a number of differences and a number of things that I learned.
Yeah.
Okay. So number one, Priority Software is an Israeli-based company.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, the ERP software market is very crowded.
Yeah.
Probably any one of a number of 150 different ERP software packages can do virtually the same job.
Yeah.
Number three, zero name recognition in this market. Zero. Number four, an impression, I guess they had an impression of themselves that because they're the number one in the Israeli market, that things were going to be easy for them here, that they were going to do what they did in Israel. And that includes acquisitions of companies in Israel to fill holes that were in the product, like HCM, they didn't have payroll, they didn't have, you know, this and that.
Mm-hmm.
Things that sometimes are in ERPs, sometimes not. But in Israel, they could kind of fill it with, as you know, Israel is different than the US in every way. One, you know, different payroll, different HCM, different, you know, different marketing, different, you know, market situation. You know, I mean, they're only their biggest competitor was SAP Business One, and they're over half of the market. Yeah. So they figured things would be easy. So they go, well, let's just go and tell everybody that's running Infor LN to use Priority. I said, you mean the $20 billion company that is going to run Priority, which is like kind of QuickBooks on steroids? I mean, no, it's not going to happen. And so I did the only thing that I know how to do, right? To generate leads. I searched on Google, right? I came up with, you know, ERP software selection, whatever. So I found top 10 ERP. I found Software Advice, which is a Gartner company. I said, we got to buy leads, guys. We got to buy leads. That's, you know, we have no brand recognition. We have no nothing. So if we're going to go after this, so, you know, that is a really tough slog. So not only are you fighting against 150 other vendors who are, well, you know, many of whom are more well-known than you and are American. Yeah. You're also having to go against 5. Well, they say 5. Software Advice says they qualify the leads and then they give 5 names to the company, right? Including Priority. Okay. You have to pay for that lead. And the bigger the company in terms of revenue, the more competition you're going to have, because it brings in SAP and Oracle comes in and NetSuite and, you know, and so on. And you have to, I'm probably running long. I'm just stoked to talk. So you call, you're the sales guy, right? You call, nobody answers the phone anyway, right?
Yeah,
So you get the answer machine, then you send them an email, which is supposedly their email. They don't send anything back. They go priority who? They're probably not calling back the other 4 either.
Yeah.
But it's supposedly qualified. It's not qualified at all. It's just somebody who visited their website and said,
Yeah.
"Hey, I want the names of a couple of people."
So
you know what I'm saying? So
this is a hard lesson. This is a hard lesson that you had to go through. And I wanted to hear you talk about that a little bit, because we were hitting it, because really we're talking about lessons learned to build your second one better. So as Merino now, you know, you said you had to go out, you were paying the leads, you're doing this kind of things. How has your strategy changed now that you know what you learned from that?
Right. So first of all, the biggest difference is that Merino is a partner of Infor Global Solutions,
okay,
which is rather well known.
Yeah.
So they're probably considered
name
third or
already.
fourth. Yeah, it's a name already. It's an American name. So that's another advantage, right?
Yeah.
I would argue that they don't have as good brand recognition as the big 3 or whatever, right? But so I've got that going for me, right? And we're not actually trying to sell the software. We're actually alliance partners, which means we sell with Infor on these net new deals. Okay, so that's a big change. And then we also have the upgrades, which is we put ourselves in position as a really reputable consulting firm in Europe, and we're building our practice. I'm hiring people. We're going to do a big boot camp. So we're thinking really big in the US, right? But we can do also the upgrade projects.
Yeah.
Right. So we have that. We have that as an option as well, which we didn't have anything because priority was greenfield and it was a foreign country software.
Yeah.
Unknown. They didn't pay any attention to the analysts. So this time around, I'm paying attention to the analysts. I'm courting the analysts. I'm writing thought leadership material on LinkedIn as part of it's a multi-tiered strategy, but the marketing is video, heavy video, because there's a guy named Eric Kimberling who, if you search ERP software, there's a few of them. There's Sam Gupta of Elevate IQ, which I really like. There's John Gross from Pemmico, which I really like. But Eric Kimberling is the one that kind of dominates the airwaves, if you will, right? On YouTube, because he comes out with another YouTube. I think he comes out with like 4 a day or something. Yeah. Right. So he's very prolific on YouTube. And his company is doing very well with digital transformations. And so we're cozy with them. We're cozy with Infor. We're a very good alliance partner. We do good projects. We have our own methodology. We have on the order of 130 consultants spanning Europe and North America. We do global projects really, really well, right? So ones that have plants, which many companies these days do, right? Plants in Europe and in the US and maybe a headquarters in the US. We handle those projects extremely well. Yeah. We're very, one of the highest, if not the highest, in doing our particular brand at Infor. The reputation is extremely good. And like I said, there amongst the management, there's guys that are old Baan guys too. Yeah. Right. So
from where you started with
from where I started it. And so that's all great. And I love the people I work with. I absolutely love the people I work with. So
cool.
I had some issues with Israelis. They just didn't listen.
Well, I think it's really cool though that you're able to go through the experience with priority, because it gave you so much foundational experience to be able to do it differently with Merino now. And it's also very interesting how your approach has changed with, writing the content, doing the videos, and the other things that you're doing, and being active on LinkedIn, just because the buyers have changed how they buy.
Yes, this is a huge point. It's a huge difference. It's a huge difference even between now and 5 years ago. I mean, LinkedIn was not near what it is now in terms of it's almost like the engine for relationship building. You can't like say I reach out to you, and this is how we met, right? We met on LinkedIn, and I reached out to you with a LinkedIn in-mail message.
Yeah.
Right. It's I don't know your email address. I don't know your email address. You're probably going to ignore an email address from me anyway, right? But you look at my profile on a LinkedIn in-mail and you go, this guy maybe knows something. He seems to have a relatively interesting profile. I'm going to engage with him. And before you know it, we have a relationship.
Yeah.
And you know, that's the way you get business done these days. LinkedIn is a huge, huge thing. And I even think that with these old sources of paid leads that have email addresses are almost getting to be useless. Right. And you're competing with 4 or 5 other vendors when you go into a situation like that. I think you're just spending a lot of money. It's just going down the tubes.
Yeah.
You really need to become, you almost have to at some level in a company, especially a consulting company, at some level, you almost have to be a thought leader.
Yeah.
Right. Because it's coming to you. You know, Eric Kimberling, he doesn't have to go doing outbound marketing. That guy just sits there and leads pour in. He's hiring like crazy. That guy right now is hiring like crazy. He's and I think John Gross is doing it too. I don't know.
People are seeking information. People are seeking information to solve their problems. And when you are doing the videos like you're doing and these other people are doing, you're writing the content, the articles to explain, talk about these problems, talk about solutions to these problems. I mean, this is old school. This is they ask you answer. What I forget the name, the author that wrote the book right now, Marcus Sheridan, I think it is. You know, it's what people, how people are buying, and it's so interesting to hear you talk about your different approach, because the buyers, the way people buy has changed so much. Like you said, in the last 5 years, even.
So, and you want demonstration videos. That's what people want to see. They want to see a demo of the product. Remember, I was like, show me a demo. Show me how it works. Show me the customer, how they use it. Show me the website. You know, remember I was even asking.
Oh yeah, you were asking that when we were live with, we were doing that with Big Commerce the other day, and it was good stuff. So
that's what we're going to do. We're going to put that on the website.
I love it. I love it because
videos.
You bet. Let people see how the heck it works. Let them feel comfortable. Come into my house and figure out how it works with me, you know, and understand, because then you take all the apprehension out of buying, and you get somebody that's going to call up Dan and the people at Merino and say, hey, we're ready to do this.
I mean, they're going to be 80% done by the time they come to you. And they already checked your profile out. In fact, they're checking your profile as you're talking to them.
Yeah, because they see the ERP doctor.
That's such a joke. I stole that from Jeff Winter, by the way.
I love it. I love it. I love it.
That Jeff Winter Insights.
Yeah.
He has a hashtag called Jeff Winter Insights. And I was like, I'm going to be the ERP doctor.
I got to think of that. That's funny as heck, Dan. Well, I tell you, Dan, we're already over time, man, but we're going to have you come back again. I do want to say hello. Sam stopped by. Sam.
Hey, Sam.
Great to have you stop by today, man. And he mentioned him. If you didn't hear that, Sam, he mentioned you as someone's building that Elevate IQ, dropping those videos. And then we had Hamza was here today, and Dennis stopped by and said hello. So, Dan, thanks for being here today. I just love the differences, you know, when you were building Performa, you know, is out there pounding the ground, doing the things that you're doing. And now you're with the different approach that's needed now, you're, like you said, you're trying to do the thought leadership, generating content, getting on these places to share your thoughts, and creating video so people can learn more about the products and demos. It's so cool. So cool.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity, Damon.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, man. I'm glad to have you, and we're gonna have to have you back. We got so much good stuff that we didn't even touch, man. We gotta have you come
surface.
Back. Just scratch it a little bit. Scratch it a little bit. Well, thanks everyone for being here. Thanks for Sam, the ERP Doctor rocks.
I love Sam. He's awesome.
Yeah, good dude. Well, thanks everyone for being here today. Dan, just hold out for a second and we'll talk and finish things up. But thanks everyone for being here once again. Hey, we'll be back again on Thursday with another awesome guest and talking about business and life. And hopefully it's interesting to everyone. Have a great evening.
Thanks, guys.